These are the recent thoughts of Sam Harris on Kamala Harris and her run for the vice presidency. Take a listen. The delirium surrounding the successful launch of her presidential campaign has yet to subside, but it will. And then Vice President Harris will have to tell us what she believes on a wide range of issues she'd rather not talk about. Having been nearly invisible for years, many centrist Democrats and independents imagine her to be as woke as anyone on the far left of California politics could hope for, and as nearly everyone else might fear. If not effectively countered, I worry that this perception of the vice president will prove disastrous in November. Are Elon Musk and other tech billionaires supporting Trump simply because they want lower taxes and fewer regulations? This appears to be common knowledge among Democrats, but it is mostly a hallucination. Their support has much more to do with what Musk frequently derides as the woke mind virus. Vice President Harris might not like the phrase, or she may believe that it callously ignores some obvious examples of social injustice. But if Trump wins in November, Democratic entanglement with the far left will be one of the primary reasons why. The Harris campaign clearly hopes to win on the issues it finds easy to frame: reproductive rights, Trump's corruption, gun violence, etc., and by turning out its base, by leveraging the politics of identity. They don't appear to be thinking about the millions of white non-evangelical voters who aren't part of the MAGA cult and who find any appeal to identity pointlessly divisive. As many have said, to allay the fears of these voters, Vice President Harris should produce a sister 𝑨𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒍 moment, drawing a clear line between herself and the far left of the Democratic Party. She needs to create distance by actively disagreeing on specific policies and by positively affirming core American values: patriotism, meritocracy, support for freedom of speech, and opposition to authoritarianism in all its forms. Vice President Harris should attack illiberal extremism on both the right and the left. No doubt the campaign is busy studying polls in swing states and may have reasons to believe that the vice president shouldn't say anything that could alienate the left wing of the party. But to appeal to the center, a pivot from progressive orthodoxy is clearly necessary. Consider this amazing piece of pandering from President Biden in the commencement address he gave at Morehouse College in May. It's natural to wonder if the democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy if black men are being killed in the street? What is democracy if a trail of broken promises still leave black communities behind? What is democracy if you have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot? Well, that's my commitment to you, to show you democracy. Democracy is still the way. If black men are being killed on the streets, we bear witness. For me, that means to call out the poison of white supremacy, to root out systemic racism. What year is this? 1964. This may be DNC boilerplate, but most of the country understands it to be a tissue of lies and half-truths. This type of political speech is offensive, not because the country is full of racists who don't want the black community to thrive, but because it is full of people who understand that, for example, the real threat of violence to young black men comes from other young black men, and this has been true for decades. This is not to say that racism no longer exists in America or that the vision of Martin Luther King Jr. has been fulfilled. But does anyone believe that these fresh Morehouse graduates will have to be 10 times better than anyone to get a fair shot? Nearly every American knows that well-qualified black applicants are advantaged in many walks of life now, and this is especially true when reaching for the highest rungs on the status ladder. Want to get your kid into Princeton or Stanford? Want to work at Netflix, Apple, the Gates Foundation, the New York Times, or the Museum of Modern Art? Mr. President, you're telling us that in 2024, black applicants have to be 10 times better than whites or Asians to get those positions? This is a lie, and it is offensive not merely to racists, but to normal, well-intentioned people who are sick of seeing everything in American life bent through the prism of racial grievance. Trump, for all his flaws, has been handed a superpower by the Democrats. He gets to call bullshit on obvious bullshit, all the while lying about everything else. The only way to rob him of this power is to stop lying about crime, police violence, immigration, Islamic extremism, trans women in, at least some, sports, and every other culture war issue. To successfully pivot on any of these polarizing topics, all Vice President Harris would have to do is display some basic sanity, all the while exposing the danger of Trump and Trumpism. But it is genuinely alarming to acknowledge how difficult this might be for her to do. For instance, what would Vice President Harris say if asked about the gender identity law that Governor Newsom just signed, prohibiting schools from requiring parental notification if a child changes his or her gender identity at school? This might seem like a fringe issue for many Democratic voters, but it is more like a nuclear bomb set to detonate at the center of our politics. As you get beyond the progressive bubble, this issue convinces people that Democrats are not merely confused or cynical, but genuinely evil. And the reason for the vice president to avoid any forum that might raise such polarizing issues is worryingly obvious. The danger, of course, is that she could be led into a thicket of culture war shibboleths, and if she were busy doing 4D intersectional math, she could get lost and sound both foolish and insincere, or worse, like a woke fanatic. Either outcome could seriously harm her campaign. Others worry that if the vice president did pivot on a polarizing issue, it would seem like hypocrisy. But times and minds change, and it would be so simple, refreshing, and sane for Vice President Harris to say something like the following: there is a profound difference between the Democratic and Republican parties at this point. The Republican Party, as you and I have known it, no longer exists. It's become a personality cult run by a former game show host with fascist tendencies. As a sitting president, Trump refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power, and we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power for the first time in our history. This violated the most important norm of our democracy. There are Republicans in Congress right now who will tell you in private how despicable and unhinged they know Trump to be. They view him as a total fraud, both as a political leader and as a businessman. But they will say nothing about this in public because they are literally afraid for their lives and the lives of their families. This is not normal. Trump and Trumpism have brought the threat of political violence into American politics. It's disgusting. Of course, I'm not saying that the Democrats are perfect, but we are still a normal political party. Yes, there is an activist wing of the party that makes a lot of noise. And frankly, it gives many people the wrong idea about where we now stand on many important issues. In recent years, the political pendulum of our party swung too far to the left, especially after the summer of 2020. But now it is swinging back. It's hard to overstate how Trump and COVID and the murder of George Floyd and the influence of social media rattled American politics. I think what we all want now, desperately, is the politics of normal. Just normal politics, with a normal range of disagreements. Not the dangerous extremes we've reached, where nearly half the country won't acknowledge the results of a fair election. Again, I mostly blame Trump for this, but the reaction to Trump from the left wing of my own party has also been damaging. Normal politics is what I hope to restore when we defeat Trump in November. But you asked me about X, Y, and Z. Here is what I think. Insert your sister soldier moment here, Madame Vice President. Many seem to fear that any pivot to the center will alienate the Democratic base. But the base has nowhere else to go. Are we really to believe that people who believe that Trump is an existential threat to our democracy won't vote if Vice President Harris divulges some accurate statistics about crime or expresses some sane concerns about 13-year-old girls wanting double mastectomies due to the influence of TikTok? It would be very easy for Vice President Harris to suddenly start making sense on a wide range of fraught issues, but this would require that she make a clean break from far-left orthodoxy. I'm sure that many Democratic strategists will recoil from this suggestion. However, I doubt they understand the level of revulsion that millions of centrists now feel for identity politics and its attendant delusions. Woke dishonesty has become a political superstimulus. For anyone who isn't truly allergic to Trump, and many aren't, it will be a powerful reason to cast a protest vote, or not to vote at all in November. What do we think about the ideas of Sam? Do we agree with him? Leave a message in the comments.